when you do the things that really matter to you in your life, you can't really ever identify when it started. Because in many ways, I really have always felt that I've been doing pretty much the same thing. But of course it evolves. The world around you evolves, your understanding evolves. But I think it's somewhere very, very early on, there was a particular crystallization of you might say, a problematique, a kind of underlying condition which sits behind most of the manifest problems. You know, you could look in the social domain, the economic domain, the ecological or biological domain, and I felt for a long time that sitting behind all the manifest problems of these different domains is something that's a little deeper and more cutting across all those boundaries. Because at some level, we create all these problems. You know, it's not bad luck, it's not random. Somehow our handprint is on every one of these problems. But of course, for most of us, most of the time, it's somebody else's handprint, right? It's not like my handprint. I'm not destroying species. Somebody else must be destroying species. But then if you look, where's the somebody else? You will not find them. Because the somebody else is a plural, us, right? It's no individual, no matter how well organized, powerful, resourced they were, could systematically go out and destroy species. And the World Wildlife just published their Living Planet Index, and we've lost half of the wildlife in the world in the last 40 years, which kind of tells us again what we all know, that this accelerating negative impact of human activity on the living world is not just a figment of our paranoia or our fears. There's really factual basis for that. But it's hard to find who's doing that. So I think I've always had this feeling that there is a who, you might say, that's acting, you might say an agent, because there's agency. Again, this is not random, it's not predetermined, this is not based on the laws of physics or some set of forces that are outside of our control. I think it's the conundrum or dilemma of our age, that we are destroying the conditions for our own well-being. It's no coincidence for almost all of human history, you had a rite of passage. In virtually whatever culture it was, you had some kind of rite of passage somewhere between the age of 13 and 15, not just to recognize the biological, physical changes, but your shift in connection. You are no longer a child. You are now part of the adult community. And so it was probably in that time period, I just remember this kind of clear awareness that, wow, there's like one problem in the world. And of course, it's impossible to remember exactly how I thought about that when I was 15 years old, but if I would try to reconstruct it as accurately as I could, it'd be something along the lines of, we've woven this incredible web of interdependence and interconnection, so that literally today we could say, my actions here in this part of the world are directly influencing conditions of life on the other side of the world, and vice versa. So we are living within this web, you know, and you can think of it like a kind of spider's web, where you just, smallest little tweak over here, something vibrates over here. And we're unaware of it, which is to say, lurking behind the scenes there was always this question of awareness. I don't think this is a new issue. I think human beings have always dealt with this issue. There's always been webs of interdependence, and you can look at the history of all kinds of societies for tens of thousands of years, and many don't last very long. You know, they grow and they overexpand their niche, they deplete their local resources, they foul up their rivers, they can't settle their conflicts, or they just wipe each other out, or greatly reduce their numbers through warfare and other forms of conflict. So I think how to live together in some sort of harmony with other humans and the place and other species there is a timeless issue. And I think probably if there was possible to look at the history of every single society or social order that ever came into existence, my bet is you'd find that 90% of them don't last more than maybe 100 or 200 years, because they can't achieve that kind of harmony. And harmony is a word, of course, you find in most of the world's older cultures. Different forms of it, Asian, indigenous, and even in the West, this notion that there really are these balances, these checks and balances. I am part of a larger reality, and if I am unaware of it, I will take actions that might make a lot of sense to me at the individual level, or even my tribe or local group, but will make counter sense. They'll be counterproductive in the larger world in which we're operating. So I think this is an old issue. I think if there's anything that's distinctive about today, as best we can know, it's the first time this issue's been playing out on a global stage. So in a sense, it's kind of a new age. But the issue is an old issue. It's just that now we have to awaken to it at a global scale, as opposed to just a local scale. And given what I assume is a fairly accurate, but obviously broad brush rendering of human history, that most human societies have failed to achieve harmony on a local scale, the odds are probably not terribly terrific that we will achieve this on a global scale. Still, the capacity is probably largely untapped. The capacity for awareness beyond myself, beyond my local family and clan and group, beyond, is probably virtually an infinite capacity. Because we have so many indications from human history of this kind of awakening, this awareness that can be generated. The video that we were watching is such a beautiful example of the astronauts' experience of looking at the Earth from space. Not just the beauty of it, not just the awe of it, but this kind of, wow, it's my home. I know this place. I can feel it. I not only can think about it, but I can actually feel it. I can feel it inside me. There's a particular type of samadhi, which is a Buddhist term. There's a particular type of samadhi that's been recognized for years. Not because there have been astronauts for thousands of years, but because there's been people who kind of put themselves in that place of this profound interconnectedness and awareness. And it's an ironic aspect of that experience that you don't really lose yourself. You lose a kind of habitual way of thinking about yourself. So that self kind of dissolves, but there's a very robust sense of self. You might say it's the robust sense of self. It's the transcendent self that's always sitting there. And all of a sudden you go, oh, hi, I know you. But the more localized self, the body, the personal ego history, it doesn't disappear. It's there. But it's sitting in this much bigger context. And you have to believe that that's a deep, innate human capacity.